My name is Jason Bray, and I'm the District Ranger from the Hebgen Lake Ranger District on the Custer-Gallatin National Forest. Today we're standing on what we call the old airport property on the edge of the town of West Yellowstone, and we're here to talk about the South Plateau Landscape Area Treatment Project. Public lands are immensely important to the community of West Yellowstone. Of course, with the amount of visitation that comes through the area because of Yellowstone National Park, along with the amount of visitation that then occurs on the Custer-Gallatin National Forest, this town, it really lives and dies by recreation and that visitation that comes from a tourist-based economy. And so when we think of South Plateau Project, we're trying to tailor that so that what we're trying to achieve for fuels reduction, both for protection of infrastructure in the town of West Yellowstone and forest health conditions, complements the need of the town to maintain that recreation-based economy. Since 2010, the Hebgen Lake Ranger District has worked to improve forest health conditions, reduce fuel loading, and enhance wildlife habitat throughout Hebgen Basin. With the Hebgen Basin Fuels Project, it moved over to the Lonesome Wood 2 project on the west shore of Hebgen Lake. We did some work thinning for forest health and fuels reasons within Rendezvous ski trails, and then most recently we moved to a decision for North Hebgen project in the north side of the basin. So if you look at project areas and how they fit across the landscape, across the basin, the South Plateau project is the next logical step when we look at fuels and forest health.
All right, we're now standing in an area that's predominantly lodgepole, and this is an older lodgepole stand that was already treated. As you can see, there's a large area behind me that's been cleared out. You could call it a clear cut. They were called clear cuts in the past. And we'll be doing some of these treatments on the South Plateau project area as well. The difference between, what you might have in your mind of what a clear cut is, you're thinking hundreds, maybe thousands of acres on the landscape. That's not what's going to be happening here on the South Plateau project. These clear cuts, or what we like to call regeneration thinning, are much smaller. They're very precise. They're planned areas, and they leave areas for wildlife to use as transportation corridors, and they take into account the species that we have in the area. And actually, in these lodgepole stands, these clear cuts or regen thins are actually some of the best ways to actually mimic the life cycle of the lodgepole stand. So it actually creates creates some great meadows. It's excellent for elk browsing and other habitat, and they're just a good way to put greater diversity and resiliency on the landscape, so it's not just an entire monoculture of lodgepole. So in the South Plateau project, especially a lot of these areas that are in the wildland-urban interface right near West Yellowstone and some of the infrastructure that we have in the area, this would be very typical of what you're going to see from some of the treatments. So to reduce the risk of crown fire in this unit, we came through and cut some of the existing trees, left a lot in the unit, but by reducing the number of trees per acre, it reduces the risk of crown fire, and any fires that we would get in here after treatment would likely be confined to just easygoing ground fires, which are much more manageable and easier to suppress, especially right here, right next to town.
We're standing within the South Plateau project area, specifically at Whiskey Spring, which is the source supply for the town of West Yellowstone's municipal water supply. In fact, during most years and most times of the year, this is their sole supply for water without having to use well water. So when you think about infrastructure and fuels reduction within the project area, it's not just about protecting the town of West Yellowstone proper or doing fuels work to mitigate concerns for Forest Service infrastructure. We have things like Whiskey Spring water supply, Bonneville Power Administration power lines within the project area, and so we're focusing hard to ensure that we can do what we can to mitigate fuels concerns for future fire potential within the project area.
All right, we're here in the South Plateau project area. A good proportion of the area is dominated by lodgepole pine in kind of a middle age class. You can kind of see that back behind me right here. This is kind of a stem exclusion stand. The stand's grown up enough to where the trees have self-pruned and there's very little understory vegetation. Some of the treatments that we're going to do in South Plateau, depending on the size of the trees and the age and things, they'll thin some of this out and allow more sunlight to hit the surface, and will encourage growth of grasses, forbs, shrubs, and a new layer of trees that'll come up in the understory. In the long term, that'll contribute to high quality multi-story habitat for lynx. It'll also provide forage for other species like elk and deer, and provide some heterogeneity on the landscape that provides different forage sources for bears and other animals. Okay. So in the project area, this lynx analysis unit, the existing condition, we found that we were a little bit low on multi-story stands. As we made the decision to defer treatment in multi-story stands, even though it would have met our purpose and need for the project, fuels and forest health concerns, but we had this double-edged sword. We want to maintain the multi-story that we have as much as we can, but still meet the purpose and need. And multi-story stands tend to be much more stable on the landscape, and they stay in that structure for a much longer amount of time, and lynx are more able to hunt or be effective hunting in those stands. So our thinning stands, what's going to happen is we're going to have a flush of vegetation. So we're going to have a lot of regeneration, a lot of shrubs, a lot of grasses coming up and creating that new understory layer, whereas before we were in stem exclusion stands and stands with very little horizontal cover.
When taking into consideration both our summer and our winter recreational use, we built some sideboards. We identified some sideboards pretty quickly that we wanted to build into the project. The first thing we identified is winter use, and we like to think that this particular area is pretty much the mecca in the lower 48 for winter motorized use. The number of trails, the mile of trails, the ability to get in the backcountry, it's really unprecedented. So we wanted to make sure that we facilitated and made the level and the standard of recreational opportunity here that people have come to expect. We wanted to ensure that and protect that. So one of the first sideboards we put into this timber sale was to make sure that the hauling and any operation that would require snow removal or snow mitigation by blading the future roads would be ceased by October 1st, meaning that there would be ample time for all of the snow that needs to accumulate to be able to get on the ground, to be rolled, to be groomed, to be ready for our winter recreationalists come December 1st.